So recently, there's been a rash of anti-trans legislation being proposed all over the country, with at least 20 states considering legislation that would roll back transgender rights, mostly going after young trans women or trans girls. And now, of course, it turns out that these anti-trans bills are being backed by some pretty big organizations, these hate groups. So let me give an example of a couple of those. Idaho just passed two anti-trans laws during the pandemic. One of them, signed by Governor Brad Little, bans transgender people from correcting their gender marker on their birth certificates, and the other bans transgender girls from competing in school sports. In fact, a lot of those bills actively go after trans girls and their participation in sports. And they've got titles like, get this stuff, Vulnerable Child Protection Act and Vulnerable Child Compassion and Protection Act. They added compassion in there. Wash.
Little girl protection, compassion, mother, father, love, child,
America.
help, heart, save, America, freedom. It's like a fucking tag accumulations done by bots, where they'll tweet out 40 hashtags with everything.
Yeah, this is like old Frank Lunt shit, where he would go and like, okay, so we want to pass this bill that gives, strips poor people of all their money and gives it to rich people, a la Robin Hood style, right? We're just going to come in, we're going to beat you up, and we're going to take your cash out of your wallet and give it to a rich CEO who happens to be outside your door. That's what we're going to do. We're going to call it the Freedom and Compassion, extra, fantastic money act. Okay. And it's going to be the America Fund, the America Money, Growth Act or something like that.
America Funny Growth Big Economy Based Epic 420.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just shit like that. And so that's what they're doing with these trans bills. Many of them, in addition to attacking trans women in sports, also criminalize doctors who provide gender affirming care, like puberty blockers. I know you've talked a lot about this subject on your show. Or require schools to out trans kids to their parents if they ask to go by certain pronouns. And of course, in a lot of the places where this is happening, where these bills are getting passed or proposed, that could be really, really dangerous for a child in school, because they might have like super religious parents or, anti-LGBT, anti-trans parents and things like that. So that's, and being a teenager who's a trans person, again, I haven't had that experience, but there's a reason where suicide rates are incredibly high for that demographic.
An interesting statistic that comes out of, I think, the 2020 LGBT. There's a big document name, but the likelihood of a trans youth attempting suicide drops by 15/16 or by about, I think, 94% if you have a supportive parent who accepts your gender identity, blah, blah. Like, you just have to have a supportive parent. That's it.
Right.
15/16. Wow. Sorry, I think that's actually 93% reduction in percentage points. So people always talk about the suicidality of trans people as though it's like an inherent component of their behavior, when
it's not.
Absolutely not. Obviously, it's a sensitive issue for trans people. If you want to make the argument, trans people care a lot about being gendered properly, then okay, fine, sure. But once you do that, you nearly fix the problem right there. And keep in mind, we're talking about the suicidality of youth. Youth already have a disproportionately high rate of suicidality because of all the dumbass hormone bullshit. So we're talking about an incredible reduction for very, very little,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you have to have a house that's and parents that are supportive. And I mean, okay, so again, having not lived through this, it's still really easy to understand why, young trans women especially, end up committing suicide because you have such a negative, terrible stigma. And you have, of course, unfortunately, you have a lot of older people, a lot of parents who are doing stuff like this, who are passing these bills, who are making it okay for their peers also to go and attack them and mislabel them and misgender them and dead name them. And all this just is horrible stuff that, of course, destroys the mental health of these young women. And
Well, yeah,
so,
it's just a really obvious get, right? Like,
yeah,
why are trans people commit suicides? I mean, why 40%? What could possibly be leading to that? And then you have all this trans bathroom bill bullshit. It's
yeah.
so obvious. And the cruelty, by the way, the cruelty is the point with regards to these things.
Hmm.
I've talked about this. I don't actually think any of these Republican legislators personally care really about trans people in bathrooms.
They
I
don't.
don't. I don't think that. But when you center the discourse around cultural issues like this,
Hmm.
which can be difficult to talk out to people who are passionate about it, you distract people from issues of real import. Now, I'm not saying that trans issues aren't important. I'm saying that we keep fighting these social battles because they're a proxy for broader institutional change. And as long as the Republican
Hmm.
Party can continue to convince their constituencies that they're the only thing standing in between America and BLM burning down the suburbs and men pretending to be women storming into the school bathroom and assaulting their daughters, as long as they're convinced that the Republican Party is that bastion, that wall, that
Hmm.
bulwark,
Oh yeah.
they are not going to pay attention to any of the heinous shit the Republicans do. They'll never need to pay attention to it. Why would they? You know?
No, exactly, exactly, and that's an excellent point that you brought up, where you have these Republicans who don't actually give a shit, but they use them as wedge issues because, understandably, like Republicans don't have plans. They don't have policy really. Their entire, the entire party really exists as nothing more than a reactionary movement towards against social progress, and really also, as I've mentioned before, a money funneling scheme to rich people, to donors. And let's be honest about that as well. That's 90, yeah, I think 90% of their existence right there. And they use these wedge issues. And it is funny the timing that this comes out right after Joe Biden becomes president of the United States. It's real weird. And right after Democrats, take over the Senate and the House of Representatives. Oh, now we're
Yeah,
worried
and
about bathrooms. It's like the
right, well,
caravans.
right, and they did it every time with the caravans in
Exactly.
2018. They pushed this narrative um, that the caravan from the south of the border was going to overwhelm America. Donald
Right.
Trump used his emergency powers to direct the National Guard there. Nothing ended up happening. You had the trans bathroom bills all throughout like 2017 and 2018, and now it feels like it's being brought up again. And now we're
Hmm.
currently dealing with trans women participating in sports, which, and I'll say it again, I've said this a million times, I do think there are some interesting, thought provoking, and perhaps necessary questions to be answered there with
Okay.
regards to the medical science behind the process.
Hmm.
But Republicans don't engage in that process in good faith, not even slightly.
No.
They don't care about the science. It's a proxy battle for what they really care about, which is hating trans people. And they only
Hmm.
really care about that because that's a proxy for distracting Republican voters from how fucked they're getting by the Republican Party.
Absolutely. So there are some organizations that are behind this push, right? You're not going to be surprised to find out Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation, the Eagle Forum, and the Alliance Defending Freedom. Again, with these ridiculous names, I want to call them Orwellian, but I think it's like misusing the term Orwellian at this point,
It's
because
pretty
this
on
is
the
what.
nose.
Yeah, but it's the shit that Orwell was warning about, you know.
Yeah,
Now
well,
the
Ministry of Peace, Ministry of Truth, right?
right.
Being respectively a war department and a propaganda department.
So okay, again, I've watched your content before, and so when you mentioned Ministry of Truth, that immediately takes me back to Babylon 5, right? I watched that. I'm a fucking dork. All right, I'm a nerd. I watch all the different sci-fi.
Do you know I'm in
So
Babylon 5?
you are,
Kind of. My father worked as one of
yeah, yeah.
the CGI people, were one of the people who did some of the graphical effects, and
That's
one of the
awesome.
ship designations was given my birth date.
Oh, that's really cool. That's
Yeah,
fucking
it's
awesome.
cute, right?
Yeah, yeah, that is
Because
awesome.
I
But
was born during production. I was born 1994.
Oh man, you're so young compared to me. I'm only about 10 years older, actually. That's not too bad.
I mean, I feel like we look about the same age.
We
So,
do. I'm I'm
oh,
I'm kind of baby face, so without the beard, I would look worse, much
hey,
worse, actually.
that's why. Hey, that's why I keep the beard. Hey, listen, okay, this is our makeup, okay. There's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with that.
it's true, and I feel like it compensates for what's missing up here, over here. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. I'll be honest about it.
Throw it out,
Like
wrap
I'm,
it around top. You know.
yeah, I'm not gonna like Tim Pool with the beanie or anything like that. I just, shave it off, shave it off. Just be honest with yourself and admit that you're going bald. It's okay. It's gonna be all right, guys.
Well,
It's gonna be
it's not
okay.
a struggle I'll have to go through. I'm afraid.
It's okay.
I am very fortunate. Even my like great grandfather had hair on his way out. You know.
Well, you actually get it. I think male pattern baldness comes from your mother's line, actually.
It's all directions. I'm very blessed. My fertile hair glands. So I'll compensate in some other way. You know. Maybe I'll end up having like a cock and ball cancer. You know.
But it's okay though. It's okay to be bald. It's okay to be short. It's okay.
Yeah,
It's
of
okay.
course. Well, you mentioned Babylon 5. There was a line I
Yes.
always liked um, from The Next Generation
Ooh.
in Star Trek, where it wasn't actually from the show, but somebody said like, "Hey, in 2432, wouldn't they have figured out a cure for
Male pattern
male
baldness.
baldness by then?" Right, of course. And then Patrick Stewart said, "By that time, they won't care." You know?
Exactly. I love
Right,
that.
right.
I'm familiar with that quote.
It's good. It's good. Classic, even. Wait,
It
just
is
a moment. I'm
absolute classic.
being beckoned. What's up?
But
Yes, absolutely. Okay. We're being another cat might be delivered soon, so I'm keeping up with it.
baby kitty.
Yes.
Mine don't actually like come through and like mine usually does spend time in this room, but he's not in here right now, and he's usually like laying down. He only like jumps on me while I'm trying to actually work on the stories, but never does it when I'm filming. It's weird, but appreciated, I guess.
They all have their own way of expressing love, right?
Absolutely, absolutely true. But okay, so there was I was talking about the Alliance Defending Freedom,
Yeah, sorry,
right?
I completely derailed. I
Don't worry about
apologize.
it. Don't no. That's what I love about having these conversations online is that you can do that, and it's like I like having natural conversations with people, and I try not to run my show like super rigid. It's
I
good to
mean,
do. It's good to have these good conversations. But
if you ever seen a
anyway,
stream of mine, you know that rigidity is not exactly a characteristic that I value. Oftentimes, I don't even
mm,
get to discussing the things that I put up in the stream title, which is
mm,
fine by
done
me.
that.
Whenever I'm planning a stream, you know, I hate it. Planning a stream sucks. Like, what am I going to talk about? I don't know what I'm going to want to talk about the next day. Actually, streaming's fun though, as long as you can talk about whatever you want. Here, I got another
Absolutely.
one.
Ah, look at him, her, or them.
Okay, there we go. We have a fleshy cat who hates being held. We'll make it work.
You make it work. You make it work.
There we go.
Look at that.
Ah,
It's precious.
good
Absolutely
baby.
precious.
All right, we got her.
So the ADL, right?
Mhm.
Alliance Defending Freedom. They're actually believed to be behind last year's Idaho law that banned trans girls from playing sports. And in 2016, they were behind laws in at least 5 states to ban transgender people from using the correct bathroom in public. And so they're behind a lot of these bills. They've also been advocating against LGBTQ people in court, defending the cake shop. You remember the cake shop in Colorado?
Oh, I remember. Wait, what's the full name of the ADL?
It is the Alliance Defending Freedom. I'm sorry, it's the
Okay, sorry. There were
ADF. Sorry,
okay,
I got
right.
that
Yeah, there were
wrong.
people in chat, the Anti-Defamation League, and it seems a
Sorry
little
about
out of
that.
character for them to
It would
engage in that.
absolutely.
Yeah, just
Sorry, that
clarifying.
that was my bad. It's one of those things that happens when you stream. Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Ah, all right, there we go. The cat fled.
So they also represented three cisgender girls in Connecticut who sued their state because they had to compete against two black transgender girls at track meets. So apparently, what did they get blown out? Is that what happened? I'm unfamiliar with that case.
No, so we specifically talked about this on stream just a little while ago, but basically what happened was the these two trans girls, it was in Connecticut, and they really good in a track meet,
Hmm.
and they got first and second, and the person who later went on to lambast this whole thing, she got in eighth place. But if she had gotten in sixth place, if the trans women had not participated, she would have gotten in sixth place,
Right.
and that would have been enough for her to have qualified for like the regional championship. The problem is the two trans girls who came in first did not win the regional championship, which means that the
Hmm.
girl who came in sixth place, well behind those two, absolutely would have not either. So it's an utterly meaningless issue. But this woman, this girl, has been running up and down conservative media. She'll probably be a Lauren Chen type in a couple of years.
Right.
Um, right, running up and down social media, talking about how she was robbed, how she could have won if it weren't for them, how her youthful dreams of athletic performance were squashed by the
Oh,
cruel
jeez.
transgender lobby. That she really plays it up. That's the whole thing, basically.
She sounds salty. I think that's what it
Oh no,
is.
she's mad. She's big mad. She's very,
Big,
very
big
mad.
man. Uh, no, it really kind of feels like it's just like a cover her for her really poor performance. She should have practiced a little bit more. She should have bootstrapped it. Worked a little harder.
Yeah, well, the thing that bothers me too is so, okay, cancel me if you like. Connecticut actually doesn't require any medical transitioning before trans women are allowed to participate in sports with cis women.
Okay.
I think that could lead to some issues because of,
Okay.
especially later on into puberty, if you've experienced a male puberty, you had a higher androgen sensitivity, and your pituitary gland pumped out hormones that led to a higher degree of athletic performance. And that
Okay.
is a bias, and there is something to talk about there. But that's not what the discussion has been. As
Right.
always, there's no room for that. Nothing. There's no room for that. Instead, it's transgender people are destroying women's sports. They're corrupting, they're polluting it. And they're actually not even trans women, they're men. And we hate them. And with all of that, with there being no room for discourse, what
Right.
is this but another pathetic attempt at
Right.
directing hate against the trans community?
Yeah, I mean, look, they have situations where they separate things by weight class and things like that. I don't really find that too entirely different if they were to talk about like the nuances of the situation, because it turns out that unfortunately nuance tends to get lost in these conversations. Republicans are not coming from a good place, so they're not coming from good faith. They're bad faith actors. So if we actually have good faith people having these discussions and setting these rules and talking about them to make sure that competition, across all genders is in all genders and sexual orientations, whatever, is as fair as it can be. I don't have any problem with that, but I do have a problem with these Republicans that continue to not be, as to go back to the beginning of what we said. They don't really even care about these issues, so of course they're not going to use nuance. No, they're going to frame it as transgender people destroying sports, transgender bad, all that stuff bad, and then
Well,
we've got to ban them to protect the girls.
they did the same thing with gay marriage too,
Right.
or really with any issue regarding really any minority issue where maybe there's some discourse to be had. Okay,
Hmm.
so again, I'll risk
Abortion too.
cancellation. On the face of it, there are some people who believe that it's natural for a child to be raised by a man and a woman. Now, that's not a belief that I've held to, but I can
Right.
understand why some people would intuitively believe that's sort of like how people are supposed to be raised. There's a lot of cultural conditioning that's gone into that. So
Right.
now we have the research. We know for a fact that that is not a problem at all. There's nothing
Mm.
inherent, nothing intrinsic. You do not need some balance between men and women to raise a kid. And that's not how humans used to be. We used to be raised in tribal communities
Right.
where the children would be raised by whoever the fuck had the time to raise the children. That was not one man, one woman. That was the tribe collectively. Um, but I can understand why some people may have been concerned to begin with. But as always, that iota, that minuscule crumb of a legitimate concern has been blown up out of proportion into this well, it was at least this massive discourse on children being adopted by gay parents. They'll be broken inside, their brains, their hearts, their minds. They'll be undeveloped. It's child abuse. There's no discussion to be had here.
Right. Again, all nuance tends to be sucked out the window on purpose in order to create a narrative, in order to create, there's a reason that they call these wedge issues. They create a wedge and they make, the two sides pit them against each other while, of course, the people who are making up these wedge issues and trying to divide people have an easier time picking your pocket.
This is why I want people to get off the culture war bullshit.
Right.
I want people to get off the culture war bullshit so desperately. There's nothing I want more than for them to get off that particular line, because it destroys political discourse. Nobody even talks about politics anymore. Have you noticed that? Even when you go conservative channels, Ben Shapiro, Crowder, nobody talks about the merits of policies being implemented. Nobody talks about dreams of a better world. Nobody talks about meaningful criticisms to existing institutional structures. All of it is this constant reality TV back and forth about who's bad this day or who's canceled this day. It's rage bait. So what? Gina Carano, Carano or Carano?
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, Gina Carano. Okay, what were people talking about with Gina Carano? Was it a nuanced conversation on the legitimacy of comparing conservatives in America to Jews in Nazi Germany? Was it a conversation on the populist and potentially anti-Semitic undertones of that one Illuminati comic she posted? No. The discourse is on she's canceled, so now she's going to work on the Ben Shapiro movie. That's it. That's all we get. We have nothing. There's nothing to talk about.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I talked about that. The entire discussion is about how it's the woke SJWs. That's who actually canceled Gina Carano. And for me, it was like, no, Disney has certain expectations for people who work for the company, right? And they sign contracts, and Disney likes to be super squeaky clean, okay? They don't like when people cause controversy. And so she caused controversy, knowingly did so. And so that's why they didn't even fire her. What they did is they just said, okay, you're just not going to come back. We're not going to sign you on for any more shows.
Yeah,
right?
They didn't re-up the contract. But
exactly.
In a sane world, even in a political world, anyone could have understood that this was the case. Okay? Anybody. Right. If you work for Disney and you freak out like that on social media, yeah, of course, you're an actress. It's your job to be as palatable and neutral to the public eye as possible, because you don't want to bring a negative eye brought to your your projects. That's your job. That's literally part of your job description. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if there were stipulations laid out in Disney contracts which specifically prohibit certain types of behavior on social media. I would not be even remotely surprised by that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So why is everyone up in arms about this? Why are we're all soy facing over here? Sorry, I mean conservatives, by the way. Right. No left-leaning person would give a fuck about this if it weren't for conservatives losing their mind over it. If Gina had gotten fired and that'd been like, oh, okay. Right. Well, yeah, she flew too close to the sun. They're the one, the free speech cancel culture. But they know this. And by the way, the same thing would have happened if there was an actor who talked about like Antifa, like firebombing police cars or something like that. If that had happened working for Disney, they would have been fired too. But I doubt that lefties would have thrown anywhere near as much of a fit over that as conservatives did over Gina.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to the fact that it was rage bait. And look, these same conservatives that are now rallying behind Gina Carano were the same ones that were like, as soon as she was introduced as a character, or her character Cara Dune was introduced, were like, oh, woke SJW shoving a woman down our throat in Star Wars. Same people, total hypocrisy.
Yeah, I think Vadim put out a tweet about that where like the headlines a month ago versus the headlines today,
Brilliant tweet. And an absolute, like great showcase of conservative hypocrisy over this.
But they don't care. They will never care about that. I don't think. They just do what they're told to follow. It's really quite distressing, I'd like to have more faith in people than that which is warranted by the behavior I see from conservatives. But
you also have to understand that conservatives, I think, are especially the ones that are always online. They're kind of like the always online left. There's not a lot of them, but they're really fucking loud.
True, but the really online righties have a lot of institutional backing that we
That's
don't.
true.
Like Charlie
That's true.
Kirk, for example. You have like Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro. I don't think Ben Shapiro has an official affiliation with the GOP, but like he's almost legitimized to the point where it feels like Charlie Kirk does directly have ties to the GOP, and
Right.
they engage in the lowest common denominator of political discourse, but they get pumped up. The Democratic Party does nothing for the loud, whiny sycophants on the left.
Mhm.
And if only they did, I would be. I'm letting it be known. I would be delighted to accept the contract from the DNC. Okay, give me a speaking spot at your next big rally, okay? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe somebody will like it.
Yeah, look, I think what you do though is you're a master of subversion. I think so, subvert those, centrists, libs into, and it's kind of what I try to do on my show. Is I put out a lot of lib shit. Let's be honest, right? Dunking on Trump, dunking on conservatives. I love it, but also it's a good way to also introduce lefty concepts. I'll throw like a little thing about worker co-ops. One of my audience members actually asked me to get your opinion on how we could do more democracy in the workplace. So if you want to tackle that, you know, like that's an excellent question. But I try to sneak those things in, try to radicalize the centrist libs into coming around to a little bit more of a left worldview.
Well, yeah, that's the pipeline, right? And they've been
Yeah,
doing that. They've been doing that
of
even better
course.
than we have too. Because every conservative channel, you go Crowder, Ben Shapiro, whatever, they kind of dog whistle pretty hard too.
Yeah,
You very rarely will you
the
watch like
human
a
whistle.
moderate conservative channel and it's just moderate conservatism and they never signal at anything more substantial or more severe. That almost never happens. Usually there's
Hardcore.
something more. There's like an underlying tone of white supremacy or white
Hmm.
nationalism or of like more vitriolic uh, um, transphobia, and that pushes people down to more extreme ends.
Right. And they've dropped the dog, like they used to be dog whistles, but they've turned into human whistles. We can all hear it, we can all see it. I mean, we have video, right, of these, people saying these things for quite some time. And it's obvious, it's out in the open. The masks are off because conservatives don't really believe in masks anyway, at this point, in wearing masks. So, they're not trying to hide it, because their base is open to it. They all want this, and I don't know how many numerous people. I think we've all pretty much said this. One of the things that they love, and can't wait to do, and the thing that they complain about the most is they can't say the N word. They desperately want to say the N word. They can't wait. And maybe it's the
Look,
fact
it's
that
it.
they don't, that they can't normally say it. That's why they want to say it so
It's
bad.
the forbidden fruit.
The
Okay, it's the
forbidden
forbidden
fruit.
fruit. They've
Exactly.
reached out since the day they were born. They've been looking for that affirmation. Maybe that'll be the real transracialism. Okay,
Yeah.
that'll be conservatives will pioneer it so they can find a way to get all their white boys and make it so they can say the N word without being canceled.
Yeah. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.